I'll hand you over to Giles, and yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks, Will. Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Giles. Welcome to my talk, all about the challenges of genuine Agile. I'm going to specifically come on to the context of that in a second after introducing myself. So I've been a software engineer for over 25 years. I've been doing roles as Director of Software Engineering, Technology Director. As Will said, I'm an Enterprise Agile Consultant, a double fellow, certified Enterprise Agile coach, and more importantly, I am a major Disciplined Agile fan. I'm a member of the Advisory Council of the Disciplined Agile Consortium, and I've been working with Disciplined Agile as a scaled Agile framework since 2013, so for the last 6 years. And I've been rolling out Agile transformations at scale for the last 6 years. Tonight's talk stems from my experiences implementing Agile at scale, both at my last place at dnata and the challenges there. I'll be highlighting the challenges that us as Agile champions face in the workplace when trying to create an environment to allow genuine Agile to flourish. And again, we'll come on more about that in a second. So the purpose of the talk is to get us all to think about whether what we're doing in our organizations is genuine Agile, or whether it is simply Agile theatre. Should everything be about Agile, or should it be part of the whole picture? What must we do to make Agile succeed within our organizations? And obviously, hopefully, this is going to answer some of Marco's questions that he had on the previous talk. There it is. And hopefully this will also augment what Fritz was talking to us about earlier this evening. And why do so many challenges still exist, even after nearly 20 years of the existence of the Agile Manifesto? And this is a real problem. So my question to everybody here tonight, does genuine Agile still exist in 2019? And if not, what do you think is stopping it? My personal answer, I believe genuine Agile does exist, but there are pitfalls and there are challenges which we must face and overcome in actually achieving genuine Agile and reaching that destination as part of our Agile journey. So what is Agile today? Is it simply just a cult or an ideology? And what I love is already seeing some nodding heads in the room. Is it becoming the goal? Is it becoming just about doing and not about being? Is it becoming too prescriptive and bureaucratic? I hear that an awful lot. Is it becoming fake? Is it only about partially implementing parts of the processes? Is it only for software development? Only about scaling and brands and methodologies and transformations? No. Is it the whole answer? I certainly hope not. Is it just a tick in the box exercise? Sometimes management think it is. Is it just about qualifications? And as I mentioned earlier, is it becoming Agile theatre? So I'm sharing some of the things that make Agile not genuine, ungenuine, and this is a real opportunity to collaborate and help get organizations to become genuinely Agile. Questions I ask on arrival in any organization I join. Are we entering into the adoption for the right reasons? Again, we don't have to do Agile for the sake of doing Agile just because someone talks about it or someone says that we have to do it. Do we understand the why? Are we implementing a way of working within which our teams can flourish? And does our Agile leadership, or should I actually just say leadership, behave with an Agile mindset and not just with Agile words? Do we have top-down, and I actually would say even bottom-up buy-in to the adoption of the processes that we're wanting to implement? Is our organization operating in silos or as a system with synergies? Do we have the right set of building blocks for our desired agility level? And are our agile successes being limited by the culture? So these are all valid questions I ask when arriving at any organization. So let's begin with what we all do, aspiring to be agile. Recent surveys by Deloitte and McKinsey show that more than 90% of senior management and technology organizations are giving high priority to the mandate of making these same organizations agile. Empirical evidence and popularity clearly shows that modern-day agile frameworks deliver superior results compared to those of traditional organizations, and ultimately this is where the mandate is being driven from. As we see up on the screen here, the percentage of agile companies and traditional bureaucratic companies whose performance units follow a given action. Those of agile in the dark blue teal line and those of bureaucracy in the light blue line. Employees provide each other with continuous feedback on behavior, progress, and/or outcomes, 80% to 43%. Leaders encourage employees to work together by incentivizing team-oriented behavior, 90% to 59%. And business unit establishes small teams with full end-to-end accountability, 88 to 58%. So we can all see that obviously it is much better to try to achieve that genuine agility. According to McKinsey's global survey in 2018, more than 80% of respondents say their organizations have undergone a digital transformation in the last 5 years. A mere 16% reported a success. And I think this goes back to some of the questions earlier as well about the success of even trying to implement agility, a framework within an organization. But only 3% claimed a successful, sustained transformation. Out of the thousands of respondents, 3% globally. That's a shocking state to be in after nearly 20 years since the Agile Manifesto was written in 2001. So this gap between aspiration and reality has led to many organizations claiming to be agile in one form or another, when clearly they are not, eroding the sense that somehow genuine agile still exists or can still be aspired to. So this leads nicely on to the 9 challenges. I'm going to share the 9 common, possibly biggest challenges that I have seen or faced in my career that are blockers for me in my quest for genuine agile. The aim of this talk is not to provide the answers for these, but to share the challenges with you, the audience, which then become opportunities for us all to share as an agile community and solve together. I'll explain more about that at the end of the talk, but Will has obviously already mentioned what we are trying to achieve with some of the survey work. I hope none of the challenges that I'm going to talk about are new to any of the agile champions in the room. And at this point, I really would like to understand who would actually be classed as someone who is an agile champion who works in a truly agile environment within their workplace. Can I see some hands, please? Okay. Right. So this is really, really useful for you guys and the rest of the audience here tonight. Having recently read some fantastic articles which brought to light my shared agile challenges, I've taken inspiration from these to share these here this evening, and I will share all references at the end of my talk today. Challenge number 1. Being agile in name only isn't genuine. The term agile is often applied to organizations or parts of that have no substantive claim to any sort of agility whatsoever. And I talk to many people who talk to me about this one all the time. This usage wrongly leads to many organizations being called agile, even though they are still managed through traditional bureaucracy. Again, I love seeing the heads nodding already. An over-eagerness to self-identify as agile has created fake agile, among organizations that misunderstand or simply choose to ignore the true application of agility. To understand whether an organization is agile, you have to look beyond what they are simply saying, and you have to look at how they are operating and behaving. Some of the most successful organizations that have implemented an amazing agile way of working don't even use the standard terminology of agile or worry about calling themselves agile at all. Their business agility is an important reason why they have become the most valuable and successful organizations in the world. Agile in name only also applies to those organizations that are implementing simply parts of the agile processes, but without the agile mindset. And I'm going to come on to that a bit later. Also, to avoid uncomfortable scrutiny, organizations may cover themselves in what's currently known as agile camouflage, borrowing the ceremonies and vernacular of agile methods without fundamentally changing their underlying work habits. Ultimately, these organizations are simply doing agile without truly being agile. This claim by organizations calling themselves agile can never be perceived as genuine and will never be successful. How we stop this happening is a challenge in itself. Challenge number 2. Adopting agile for software only isn't genuine. The Agile Manifesto and corresponding principles were originally written for the context of software development teams. They were intended to address issues that software development teams faced in the late 1990s and early 2000s. That's why it was created. The fact that the wording of the manifesto is limited to software development is wholly less than adequate as a definition of business agility. When agile processes are introduced into software teams in traditionally managed organizations, they inevitably run into conflict with the other parts of the business that have much more bureaucracy and certainly are less flexible to change. Frick started talking about some of those things, especially around funding, HR, etc., etc. Because the most widely shared definition of agile is all about software development, senior management often become confused, asking, and I've had this asked of me many times, isn't agile just for software only? Too often, the leaders in an organization undergoing an agile transformation think all that's involved is the software teams learning a new framework. I've had to take many senior management teams on Agile 101 courses for them to understand what it is all about. Therefore, understanding the agile mindset, manifesting agile values at all business levels, being agile is critical to building that truly agile organization. In arriving at this initial perception, what some organizations wrongly call agile is often only a couple of parts of the process cobbled together, maybe some development sprints, and yet no adoption with the rest of the organization. And this is where it starts to fall down. Intensifying the idea that agile is simply the coding part. And believe you me, so many people have told me that in my career, which doesn't require other elements, departments, and actors involved in the overall process. This again creates a version of fake agile within that same organization and limits the idea that agile actually refers to the ability of that organization to rapidly respond to change. As we all know, coding is a very small part of the overall delivery process. It's not surprising then that the perception of just making the coding part agile with no engagement whatsoever with the rest of the organization makes it wholly run into conflict. especially if the rest of the organization is still working in an old way with old business processes and bureaucracy. Genuine Agile should not be restricted to software development only. I think there was a question about that earlier. It should be focused across the whole organization to achieve successful business outcomes. Agile, especially for software, is not the goal. Challenge number 3, hopefully you can see where this is going. Obsessing over scaling isn't genuine. As we all know, the industry term scaling is about how we can scale agile practices to support the enterprise. It's essentially enterprise agile that's focused on the adoption in large-scale environments. However, scaling across that enterprise is not scaling more of the same, starting with one agile team and thinking you can just roll that out 40 times across the entire organization. There is no cookie cutter pattern for us to use. Apologies for skipping. Scaling across a large heterogeneous enterprise is about breadth, diversity, and complexity. Often organizations start obsessing about scaling up as if this is some organizational goal to achieve, especially because they hear it as a buzzword. The issue here is that if the organization is thinking about scaling up Agile, it's already on the wrong track. The challenge of genuine Agile is how to descale big, monolithic, internally focused systems and their business processes into tasks and projects that can be run by smaller, agile customer value-focused teams. Another perspective in the support of genuine Agile is that it's about a way of being and does not require specific practices to supposedly make it scale. In a recent blog post by John Smart, it was titled, "Want to Scale Agile? Don't. Descale the work first, achieve big through small." Great post. Go and look it up. Fantastic. Challenge number 4. Submitting to the command and control gang isn't genuine. What's annoying about Agile to control-minded management is that it recognizes that a very big problem lies in control itself. Reconciling Agile execution and innovation lies in giving greater freedom to those doing the work, being able to exercise their talents and creativity, but doing so within short cycles, so they themselves can see whether they are making progress or not. Even worse for hierarchical bureaucracy, Agile thrives on transparency. Who'd have thought? One of the dirty, not-so-little secrets of traditional management is that control thrives on non-transparency. So introducing genuine Agile means exposing all of those non-transparent tricks that hierarchical managers play on their subordinates to maintain power. We've all seen it. Is it any wonder then that Agile isn't naturally popular with the command and control gang, and as such will not succeed if they do not allow genuine Agile to flourish within the organization? For this gang, the hardest lesson is learning to trust talented people, all of the Agile people in the room, then recognizing when to get out of their way. Challenge number 5, fixating on brands isn't genuine. Within the Agile world, there is the sense of various Agile brands being promoted by companies, consultants, trainers, of which there are over 40 variants and 70 Agile practices, as can be clearly seen in the Agile landscape that Christopher Webb created, I believe, for Deloitte quite some time ago. We are now on version 10. These are all multiple variants of the same underlying idea of, drumroll please, Agile. Simple as that. An emphasis on any particular variant of Agile as the answer, and the insistence on using the particular branded labels, processes, terminology, tends to take away from the principle of Agile as essentially a different way of working, not simply the products or wares of a particular company or consultancy. These multiple forms of branded Agile are at times confusing and can lead to the impression that Agile itself is confused, which causes even further friction for senior management within our organizations. Branded Agile variants include many that are genuine, but some that are fake. And a major caveat here that I have especially learned the hard way: beware of companies, consultants, and trainers who insist that their branded version of Agile is the one and only true way, which will not allow genuine Agile flourish to flourish and evolve within any organization, regardless of how it is implemented. It will never be successful. Challenge number 6, replicating a way of working isn't genuine. Many companies today are now aspiring to create their own internal framework based upon their existing one, and hopefully this answers the question that Marco was asking earlier. Leaders of mainstream Agile frameworks, like Disciplined Agile, for example, are openly advocating that this evolution is what all companies should be aspiring towards. Move away from saying an organization is following a branded Agile framework towards an understanding that Agile, as I mentioned earlier, is that different way of running an organization with its own unique way of working. The leaders at DA recommend that you do not aspire to be Spotify, but rather be like Spotify in creating your own wow, your own way of working. Start with a basic Agile method, the recipe, then spice it up with the help of proven strategies from many Agile toolkits, frameworks, making it hybrid, the ingredients. Become your own Spotify, not somebody else's. It's a very good idea. In fact, it's a great idea to learn from others, to get inspiration, to get ideas. Not to copy. You can and should always do better than just copying someone else's solution or methodology in creating your own way of working for your organization. Teams and organizations need to take control of their Agile processes, not buy one or implement something generic that will not work for the organization as a whole and can never be perceived as being genuine. Create an organizational culture that supports trust, innovation, autonomy, experimentation with little bureaucracy for that genuine agility to be able to succeed. If you're copying Spotify, ask yourself, are you a music streaming company based in Sweden? Just saying. Challenge number 7, enduring organizational friction isn't genuine. IT as a metaphor is often compared to that of a car. Fricks mentioned it as well. High-performing teams in organizations are often described as a Ferrari. I like to think so. I know this firsthand, seeing teams previously described as lethargic in an organization, in some ways like that of a backstreet garage owner, sat in a deck chair with a hanky on his head, not wanting to do any work on a car sat up on a ramp, and transforming them into that Formula One team working so well and tuned together, being able to take the wheels on and off a car in under 2.5 seconds. However, there is no point in tuning that Ferrari or Formula One car if it's going to be stuck in traffic. It isn't going to go any faster. Traffic and blockers in front of the Ferrari need to be moved out of the way for it to perform. There's no space to support high-performing teams in any organization with those organizational impediments. Your way of working should aim to resolve this friction rather than simply enduring it, allowing teams to deliver the best way they can. Do not think for 1 second that this friction can simply be ignored or sidestepped in achieving that genuine agility within the organization. This has caught myself and colleagues out more than anything else here on the quest. Challenge number 8, the penultimate challenge. Accepting bureaucratic leadership isn't genuine. We may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated. I think that's a great quote, especially when trying to work with Agile in organizations. One thing that hasn't changed with the popularity of Agile, there's still loads of pressure from the top down. And I believe, again, there was somebody who was asking the question about this earlier this evening. In an ideal organization, C-suites, C-levels would transform too. But that's simply not the case in many organizations, especially ones that I and colleagues have worked in, where they simply revert back to the processes that they know, believing that somehow they understand delivery better than the Agile champions and Agile coaches, and better than those who are in the teams daily doing the work. Unfortunately, these executives are still focusing on snapping their fingers, trying to become Agile magically, the Harry Potter saga, often without any care or understanding why, and trying to witness a faster time to market, which ultimately never comes. Let's go back to the 3% that I shared at the start of the talk this evening. Senior management often doesn't understand what Agile actually is, as was talked about earlier, and sometimes don't even want to understand what it is. I recently had a manager, if you can call him that, who used to say to me and of the Agile framework to others, "What is this thing you do?" even if I told him 20 times a week. They therefore mistakenly think it's some kind of new bureaucracy, voodoo. And believe you me, I've had 2 different bosses in my 25-year career, and probably in the last 10 properly with Agile, who have called it that, associating it with a lack of control or management, a chaotic free-for-all with no plan. Or they believe they might lose control of the products, what they are selling, their USP, and not be able to make changes to them as and when they see fit. They also often experience friction with new Agile ways of working, often due to a lack of education given of the journey being taken, or sometimes a general resistance to change. Wrongly thinking it'll cost too much to implement. I've had that one multiple times. Often due to the need of required roles to deliver successfully, even after streamlining teams to begin with. Or losing sight of the real goal, which is achieving successful business outcomes, not simply doing Agile. This new way of working can wrongly become re-diverted into yet another company reorganization, driven by the same senior management wanting to get control back over what is happening in the organization, creating further change fatigue. This invariably leads to a way of organizing, a woo, instead of a way of working, a wow, and will create even further friction within that genuine agile adoption and make it far less likely to succeed. The Business Agility Report 2019 Preface states, "The report is a sobering account of the obstacles along the way, especially in larger organizations that suffer from risk-averse cultures, organizational silos, bureaucratic layers, workforce passivity, traditional mindsets, and above all, lack of strongly supportive leadership at the top." Agile leadership throughout an organization is harder than traditional leadership, but not many people recognize this. If you're doing it right, you care a lot more. Often these agile leaders are the filter between these harsh top-level objectives and truly trying to motivate their teams, making a difference and enabling successful delivery. Agile leaders must help organizations understand that it's not a new level of bureaucracy and they will not lose control of their products. An agile leader is, by necessity, someone who lives and models that agile mindset, i.e., someone who is flexible, open, respectful, responsive, not prescriptive and bureaucratic. I think this says it all. Genuine agile leadership means living the agile mindset. Which leads very nicely on to challenge number 9, the last challenge. Having a closed or fixed mindset certainly isn't genuine. As discussed earlier, organizations that are very agile often shy away from the label agile, or are moving away from saying they're following a particular brand and are using their own homegrown words, which feels a lot more genuine. The main difference between those organizations that can claim to be truly agile and those that can't is for a large part down to those adopting an agile mindset as a large part of the company culture, i.e., being agile and not simply just doing agile. If this doesn't happen, then that company culture will never improve, and I've seen it, even if senior management thinks it'll be just fine that way. An agile mindset is that set of attitudes that support a truly agile working environment. These may include things like respect, collaboration, improvement and learning cycles, pride in ownership, focusing on delivering change, and the ability to adapt to change as well. This mindset is necessary to cultivate those high-performing teams who in turn deliver amazing value for their customers and the organization. The mindset is also independent of terminology, labels, specific proprietary processes, or particular brands, and helps with fixing the perception of whether an organization can claim to be truly agile or not. If this mindset is cultivated and nourished, teams will experience amazing outcomes, happy employees delivering great value and great results. Ultimately, Agile is about embracing that different mindset. In my experience, my personal experience, when people in an organization have the right mindset, it hardly matters what tools, processes, practices they are using. The Agile mindset makes things come out right. Conversely, if they don't have that agile mindset, it doesn't matter if they're implementing every tool, process and practice and every letter according to the book. No benefits will flow in the organization at all. This mindset is the environment within which Agile teams truly flourish and can claim genuine agility. So, our journey and destination for genuine Agile. We've seen the 9 challenges. If you've decided you want to become an Agile organization, you're embarking on a journey to create customer value at high speed. As I think I heard in a question earlier, there is no one-size-fits-all process at the start of the journey on how to achieve it or how it will simply reduce cost from the outset as a goal from senior management. It's also not something that can be implemented overnight, especially across an entire organization. Please don't let anyone tell you it can. There are many factors, some that have already been discussed this evening, that need addressing first of all to make a success of this Agile journey. There is not a set path, and the outcomes differ for all organizations. It's not about adopting a model or framework that works for somewhere else, or being forced to change your approach and journey halfway through, especially when the maturity of engineering, product, program, delivery, coaching capabilities are already being proven. Always focus on the reason you're doing this. It's not about creating or simplifying a nice organizational chart for senior management. Your organization is not the goal. It's a means to an end. If you lose track of that goal, no organizational model will help you achieve the transformation or the right business outcomes in helping you create that customer value at high speed. As I've already mentioned many times this evening, Agile is that mindset. Agile isn't a methodology to implement within the existing management framework. Agile is all about working smarter rather than harder. It's not about doing more work in less time. It's about generating more value with less work. You don't do Agile if you simply want the benefits. You have to be Agile. When Agile is done right, the teams are working within a business model that generates value for the organization as well as the customer. Therefore, our goal should not just be about Agile. Our goal is enabling successful business outcomes. Ultimately, this way of working and approach sets up that organization to say it is genuinely being Agile. Parting thoughts. Forget about whether you are scaling or not. Whether you need to say you're following a particular brand to make a success of that adoption or transformation. Box ticking to make the organization be thought of as doing Agile. I've seen that so many times. Satisfying incorrect management control or bureaucracy. Think about the outcomes from why you are doing this. Evolving your Agile approach to fit your organization. Creating a wow, that way of working that works for the whole company. And becoming that focused Agile environment that delights customers. Enjoy the evolution. So the 9 challenges wrap up. As I mentioned at the start of the talk, the aim of this evening is not necessarily to provide answers for these, but to share the challenges, which then become a catalyst and opportunities for us all as an Agile community to solve together, especially if they are still being pervasive in organizations today, as I said, nearly 20 years since the creation of the Agile Manifesto. This leads very nicely onto the final question and have your say. What is genuine Agile for you? And what are your Agile challenges getting there? As Will mentioned, and as Pete mentioned, on screen you'll see a QR code and a short URL. This will take you to a 2-minute survey where you can answer this question and a couple of others too. The outcome of doing this is going to be a report into the challenges that are still affecting the implementation of genuine Agile within our organizations nearly 20 years on since the launch of the Agile Manifesto, and what we need to do as an Agile community to resolve them. The data is obviously predominantly going to be based from here in the United Kingdom, but not limited to it. And it'll be published in a white paper in conjunction with Growable, who are here running this tonight, hopefully in Q1 2020. I'd also love to come back in 2020 and share all of the findings from the survey that we've been running at a future meetup. Thank you very much.